Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this webinar on AI and its implications for the human labor market, evidence from research and practice. I'm Vikas Aggarwal. I'm a professor here at INSEAD in the entrepreneurship area. I'm also the academic director of INSEAD's Global Private Equity Initiative, which is our center focused on private capital globally. And today's webinar is part of the Tech Talk X series by Digital at INSEAD, which is dedicated to exploring new digital technologies, their applications, as well as their impact on management, business, and society. For more information, you can visit us at our Digital at INSEAD website. And I'd also like to thank our sponsor, Accenture, for their support in making this series possible. So just some quick webinar etiquette. The audience is muted. The video and chat functions are disabled, but we'd like to make this interactive. And should you have questions for our speakers, please do use the Q&A tab. Ideally, your questions should be short and to the point. And to help us identify the most relevant questions, you can vote on the existing questions. And those will then be picked up and asked of the panelists. The webinar is being recorded, and should you encounter any technical issues, you can email us at digital@insead.edu. So to kick things off, what I thought I would do is to motivate this topic of the webinar, which is, as I said, AI and its implications for the human labor market, is to tell you briefly about a research study that I conducted together with my colleague Ivana Namovska here at INSEAD and Dokun Yilmaz, who's based at Erasmus University. And what we do in this paper is to look at the substitution effect of AI on human labor. And this is really motivated by this idea that even though we've talked quite a bit about what AI could do, there's actually limited retrospective empirical evidence on the extent to which AI can replace human tasks, particularly in the context of knowledge workers. And so what we study is the extent to which the introduction of Google Translate in 2016 and 2017, and more recently ChatGPT, affected the human labor market. In the context of ChatGPT, we're thinking about the context of language translation. So how did Google Neural Network change the degree to which human translations were demanded by the labor market? So we look at this using data from an online labor market, focusing on human translations, about 28,000 transactions, that covered the period before and after the introduction of Google's neural network-based translation service. And with respect to ChatGPT, we look at the effect that the introduction of ChatGPT in late 2022 had on the demand for coding advice. And for this, we use data on Stack Exchange forums and questions and answers from these various forums. And so effectively, we have the set of natural experiments, the introduction of Google Translate and the introduction of ChatGPT, for which we employ difference in differences design, which helps us really understand very causally what the implications were of AI in both of these cases. And so one set of key findings is that there's a significant reduction in human translation transactions after this AI-based Google Translate is introduced, somewhere on the order of about 13 to 20%. We also find that there's a significant decline in the earnings of these translation workers on this online labor market platform. But the mitigating effect of this is certain types of translations. So these are what we call transcreations. And these are things that entail the adaptation of meaning to the cultural and emotional elements. They require some degree of influence. And so you can imagine these are things like marketing or poetry. These, for the most part, remained automation resistant and did not experience a drop as a result of the introduction of Google Translate. And we also look at the effect of ChatGPT, again, in a different context, looking at coding advice relative to advice around other sorts of creative content. And we find very similar patterns where more analytical content is affected by the introduction of ChatGPT, but more creative content is less affected. So if we think about some of the implications of this, what we're highlighting here is a nuanced substitution effect across different types of tasks within a given profession of knowledge workers, translators. And this suggests a number of things. So one, is it necessary to retrain workers for more creative tasks to allow them to acquire new skills? If AI easily substitutes knowledge worker tasks, would we find that firms that have made high investments in skilled labor may end up losing their advantage? And it also suggests that it's necessary to understand some of the variation in the substitution effect of AI and the ways in which firms can adapt their workforce accordingly. So this is hopefully some motivation for the discussion that we're going to have for the next hour or so together with our fantastic panel. To quickly introduce our panelists, if I could ask the panelists to come online and turn on their cameras. We have Burcu Bicakci. Burcu is a partner at Egon Zehnder. We have Fernando Lucini, who's a managing director at Accenture UK. We have Karli Kalpala, who is head of strategic transformation at Digital Workforce. And I think this group of panelists is very immersed in what's going on currently in the world of AI, how that's changing the ways in which we all work, and really looking forward to this discussion on the implications of AI for human labor. So maybe to kick off, what I'd like to do is ask each of the panelists to just introduce themselves to the audience and perhaps share a bit about your role within your organization as it relates specifically to AI. So maybe, Burcu, if you want to kick things off.
Well, thank you, Vikas. I'm based in our Singapore office, so it's 10 p.m. here. So it's good to be here today. In Egon Zehnder, we work in talent advisory space. So I work with our clients for discovering and developing leadership, especially at the top of the house. And in particular, I'm focused on technology and working with our technology clients, but also how technology permits organizations in their transformations. This is my specialization. And within AI, I globally lead our AI think tank for the time being. We don't even tend to call it a practice group because it is still an area that we are developing ourselves and learning as well. And what it means is we are trying to come up with our strategic approaches to our clients, advising their talent strategies when it comes to what AI means for them and how they should be looking at the future when it comes to their talent strategies. So that's what I do in Egon Zehnder.
Thanks, Burcu.
Am I next on the list, on the hit list? Lovely to see you all. I'm Fernando Lucini. As you can see from the slide, I'm based in the UK, but I'm a global citizen. I'm the chief data scientist of Accenture globally. So my job is to support our wonderful data scientists in the firm who are mostly industry and function oriented. So we solve interesting and important industry problems with science. So science is our tool, industry and function are our problem spaces. We solve those problems wherever they might be around the world for some of the top companies in the world.
Thanks, Fernando. Karli?
Hi, nice to be here. So Karli Kalpala, I work at Digital Workforce. Digital Workforce, we are a business process automation service provider located in Nordics. I'm actually located in Helsinki. We have been developing AI-driven automations for our customers since 2016, I suppose. And very much what keeps us going in this domain is the realization that with today's technologies, we can probably automate every second of the work activities that is happening in different knowledge work incentive industries, but only less than 5% of full job descriptions can be automated. And the quest that we are chasing all the time is that how can you actually operationalize AI in the core business processes? I've been here with 7 years, first doing some implementations myself, but for the past 2.5 years leading our kind of quest as a digital workforce to transform from a kind of to be a kind of market leader also in this AI-driven automation space, something that we call end-to-end process automation capabilities. So yeah, that's me.
So maybe one thing, maybe just to start with, and would like to get kind of the reaction of each of you to this, is, if you think about your clients and you think about the most important opportunities, near-term opportunities for AI to actually change, improve the value of their businesses. What are some of those opportunities, and could you maybe provide some examples of ways in which AI can offer increased value to businesses? So maybe Burcu, if you want to kick off.
Okay, sure, because so to start with, I think I'd like to say that the number of use cases and the amount of AI usage in the across the industry is not huge. So especially after last year's big ChatGPT announcements and AI advancing as part of the trendy topics, if you want. We've had a lot of questions about what to do about AI, what are we missing, and the anxiety of we should not be missing, what should we do about it from our clients, right? So since 8-9 months, has there been a significant change in the use of AI in terms of use cases? Pretty much not too much, I would say. Software organizations largely have adapted ways to develop software in a much more effective way. So their productivity has significantly increased. Content management and unstructured data processing when it comes to enhancing and augmenting decision-making has developed a bit. It's not a lot. Some of the more mature industries when it comes to data processing and data scientists, maybe more financial services, have started using the language models for enhancing their customer-facing applications. But that is more or less in a nutshell what I am observing. Let me also look at my fellow panelists here if they're going to add anything, but this is more or less what I'm seeing as enhancing as we speak.
Yeah, Fernando, Karli, do you want to come in on that?
That's it. If we'll just follow the order, if that makes sense. Yes, so I agree with that. Look, for people like me that have been building AI systems for 20 odd years or more, the AI has always been there. I think now we've got this moment where any AI is Gen AI, is data, is AI, is everything, which is great, and we're all very happy. But in terms of the use cases, to Burcu's point, there's a massive move towards the Gen AI type use cases, and the enthusiasm is important and interesting. Is it really materially changing things substantially? Not quite yet. And there's a bunch of comments in the chat about confidentiality and trust and these things that we will no doubt talk about. But I think I will tell you if I turn the question into what are people most interested in, maybe and more excited about, the co-pilot idea is very popular for people. We're talking about workforce and things like that, because it's very exciting to have helpers that are there all the time, that are patient all the time. If you're doing software engineering, you may not want this thing to give you all the answers, but boy, is it nice to have a sparring partner that it's there forever and is eternally patient. So we're seeing a lot of that knowledge mining, to Burcu's point, and a lot of testing and playing. And at some point in the conversation, we should talk about, let's not call it traditional AI, but the AI that we've been doing for a long time, that powers most banks, that makes sure that your car drives, and all these other things that are important and interesting, if that makes sense, Vikas.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think I tend to agree with the co-panelists here that the kind of, even though the hype has been tremendous over the past 12 months or so, especially around the Gen AI, it's really kind of where I see still, we started working with intelligent document processing, conversational AI already 7 years ago and so forth. And typically it's the problem is not the technology when applying it on the customer front. It's actually finding a relevant business case, a big enough chunk of a similar type of looking activities in the organization that actually paying the effort to moving those activities to some sort of an AI-driven kind of a capability would actually make commercially sense. And I think that is in the core of at least what we are trying to kind of work with our customers, is that how do we actually understand better the context where to apply these technologies and how to actually generate something in the business value side out of the capabilities that has taken tremendous leaps over the past handful of years without any questions. So yeah. I think I am out with the guys here.
Well, one small addition that I'd like to make, because I think the content generation piece has also picked up a little bit, right? So in general, the agencies, marketing, collateral generation, advertisement space, game studios. So when it comes to images and overall the creative content generation, it has also a lot of movement as we speak. That's an area that we think will be disrupted a bit more sooner than the rest of the industries.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of this is about generative AI, some of the hype related to content generation. I want to hone in a little bit more on really the topic of what we're talking about here, which is more on the implications for the human workforce and implications for labor. And maybe one element of that, of course, is to think about the role of leadership, right? And if we think about the ways in which AI can be leveraged within decision-making processes of leaders, the ways in which leaders innovate, you know, do you have any thoughts on how that might evolve, or what AI's role in leadership and the role of leadership in innovating and changing organizations might be going forward?
Because that's mostly where we spend our time on, right? Because our clients also want to know, especially as a leader of this organization, what am I supposed to do and how I should be approaching as AI is hitting my door. And the way I like answering this question is look at what AI can do for you and for your workforce, right? So, and I like summarizing this in 3 topics. So I think augmentation or support of the decision making by enhancing our capabilities to synthesize more data and being much more informed about what's happening out there, being more smarter, using more data than ever. And that actually makes us augmented, smarter. And if you're not up to speed with that as a leader, as well as if your organization is not up to speed with that, you're going to be falling behind, right? So that's one aspect of it. Second aspect is the productivity aspect, which is acceleration. So, so the first was augmentation, my point of view, and second is acceleration, which means you need to leverage the benefits of AI when it comes to bringing the productivity tools and really making it faster, cheaper, and better, right? So, and that reality is happening, which we used to talk about when the digital transformation wave was hitting. And now with AI, I think this is becoming reality. So acceleration is an important part. And for a leader of an organization, you need to understand what sort of jobs have a potential to be automated and then where is going to be the change in your workforce so that you can already start planning for that. And the third one for me is where you also mentioned about diversity aspect of this. I think accommodation is the third element. And accommodation in the sense of, because AI is so easily helping close the, like our skill gaps, competency gaps, if you want, right? So in the past, for example, somebody who couldn't write essays can now write essays. Somebody who would be bored in reading tons of papers can easily get summaries now. Or language skills, right? I mean, we were looking for people who were bilingual, trilingual in the past for particular roles. It's going to be obsolete very soon because we don't need language skills that badly anymore. So I think AI is giving us a lot of opportunities to accommodate skill gaps so that we can be more inclusive and more accommodating for different types of talent, which also means another implication for the leaders. So in a nutshell, I think the leaders need to be very educated about the possibilities today. And then thinking forward as AI progresses, as AI hits really to their doors and business processes, what should I be doing about these 3 things and how should I stay competitive around these 3 things? So that's the way I would summarize.
Yeah, that's interesting. I want to pick up on that accommodation point, because I think that's interesting to say that, okay, there's a lot of skills which are not needed by the workforce, right? AI can now help augment, it can help you stay informed, it can accelerate your productivity. And so there's a lot of kind of skills which maybe certain leaders don't have that can be complemented by AI. But I guess what I'm wondering then is, are there skills and competencies that managers do need to build that may be different from what they have in order to be able to leverage the power of AI across these different dimensions? I was wondering if you had any comments on that. I mean, either
Vikas, do you mind if I come in very briefly to add a little bit to before and to get onto that question? Is that all right?
Sure, absolutely.
A couple of things that I've said there were quite right, but we also have to think, look, you're a leader. we're talking about AI here probably because we're experts in a very general form. AI is not one thing; it's many, many things. It's a bunch of engineering that does different things. It's not all the same. In the same way that not all cars are the same. They're all built by different people and do different things. But if leaders need to understand, number one, they need to be educated on what AI is. Otherwise, they fall into the trap of generalization, which is a terrible trap where we start making things up that it can do or not do. We have to really grab on to the concept of craft. Just because you can use a language model to do some coding doesn't make you a coder. It just means that you can ask some questions about coding. It doesn't mean that you can do anything sensible. So the famous was it Malcolm Gladwell or Andrew Erickson or somebody that said you need 10,000 hours of learning to become craft. And in Japan, 40,000. I like the Japanese answer better. Whereas doing things like this as a leader, you need to give your people ways to Burcu's point, to accelerate some things, to get things there quicker, hey, if I don't particularly enjoy putting little tags on my code, this thing can do a good job of that. But can it design a really good piece of software? Probably not. Or translation is a beautiful one. It does translate absolutely beautifully. It's a lovely thing to see. So craft, I think for me is a super important one. The other one I want to add just very briefly, and I'll pass the baton on, is specifically as it relates to generative AI and language models. It's very important that we do not trust these things for what they know. We trust them for what they know of language. But if we're sitting here thinking that we can trust our employees to a language model trained on billions of bits of data from the internet and trust that it's knowledge and it's the hallucinations and all these things, the lies it tells you, are safe, we're in big trouble. So as leaders, we also have to figure out, in the midst of all of this, what is the value to my people of a tool that has a massive, incredible understanding of language, but I might not be in a place where I can trust what it knows of the data it's learned. If you see that difference, right? And that is a trap that all companies and all leaders are stuck with, because they don't know AI very well. So they're thinking, well, there's this thing that has this amazing knowledge and can do things in the style of Shakespeare. Yes. But I mean, that's not really how it's going to help us if I can't trust that the answer is right, and half the time it hallucinates. So leaders have this challenge, and Burcu and I have talked about this before, of education and trying to get themselves to the point where they can know enough to do what Burcu very kindly said, which is absolutely right. So at that point, it's an important one.
Yeah.
And I think kind of, yes, and I think you mentioned in the paper as well, kind of about the innovation, especially leadership. I think it at least needs to be acknowledged the fact that there is this kind of competitive advantage residing in holding hand of scarce resources. Especially I'm talking, for example, service integrators and software side, that there's a fact that you are in the business because the thing that you do is pretty much you hold in the assets that can do it. And those trends, it's in different industry, but I know this industry best. I think there is something going on anyway in the big trend. It's not only about AI, it's also about the low code and other topics, cloudification of things. But that is something that I would at least, and in my role, I need to ask the question all the time, that what is the role of, it's like the transaction cost economics, the theory around that where is the kind of optimal friction? Is this type of a middleman needed always to do all sorts of basic installations, basic kind of software updates, as that type of elements? I think that is an thing that the leaders should understand, that where is their competitive advantage coming from? Is it holding hands into scarce resources, or is there something actually in the thing that they do that creates the value? And I would draw attention to that, and something that we are discussing a lot in our company at the moment. Probably because we don't own our own IP in the kind of software side itself, but we are implementing existing software. So asking the question that what is our labor's role in the strategic kind of horizon of 5 to 10 years, or even beyond that.
Yeah. One of the things that Fernando, you had mentioned is so obviously kind of this interaction between human intuition and AI, things that AI can generate but may not necessarily know. how do you think about the ways in which that interaction can be more productive? Is there some sort of a division of labor between what individuals do and what AI does? How do you sort of think about the way in which you organize that interaction between AI and human labor?
Well, since you mentioned me, I'll answer you. I'm a bit more brutal about this. I'm 100% sure that AI does no labor. We do labor, and AI supports labor. That is the way of things. I have the idea of craft so set into my psyche that I struggle with thinking that AI can have craft. But I do feel the supporting function is really there. So I do think there's a partnership there to support in many areas of work. And I always joke, I have this example, it'll make you laugh for a second, but I built this very large language model in Python just for laughs, because you do. And I use it to test ChatGPT and others to see how they help. And I give this thing to this thing, and it says, fantastic, you built this large language model in Python. It's probably not the best idea, but it's very good, it's very nice, very pleasant. And then I figured out that it's got a big bug. So I tell it, oh, I found a bug. It says, oh, indeed, you have a bug. Then I realize, oh, it's not a bug. So I say to it, oh, I don't think it's a bug. And it says to me, oh, indeed, it's not a bug. And after 4 or 5 of the interactions, I feel, okay, I'm losing my mind here. This partnership is not working, because I'm trying to interact with you as if it was a partnership, and there is no partnership. You tend to be agreeing with me and disagreeing with me, but not taking me in the right direction. So we're in a place where we have to really be clear about our roles in this, and it's not a role of partnership; it's a role of tool. This is a very clever toaster. So we need to understand the role of the toaster in our house, and little by little integrate it into little pieces of our life in an intelligent and useful way. But never forget that it is a tool. Let's not assign intelligence to it. Let's not assign agency to it. Let's figure these things out. And back to the leadership, then it becomes easier as a leader for me to assign it a role in my organization that fits to how the rest of the organization will think about their own role in life without diminishing the 40,000 hours of and all these other things, which it can help supplement, if that makes sense. Sorry for a convoluted answer. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah.
But I think it's a good point, and it's the task-oriented kind of a mindset that no labor is actually, or that it's a sum of multiple different types of tasks, and some of the tasks can be substituted by AI, but by no means the whole kind of occupation or the actual content of the work that you're performing can be, at least today, and most likely not in the near future, fully kind of supplemented by the AI. And also that comes quite nicely in your research up that it's those nuances that the focus of a translator shifts over time, but it's not the kind of death sentence to the translation occupation as such. And I think we are a bit poor understanding exactly how that looks like in the future in the labor market at the moment. It's easy to make these assumptions that these jobs go away and then something else comes in, but it's more nuanced. Definitely.
Yeah, I think my point of view on this is a bit time related, meaning we have been struggling about upskilling leaders as well as workforce for a very long time. I mean, forget about AI, right? I mean, even digital transformation, as we bring new tools and technologies, organizations have been suffering to bring people up to speed to make best use of these systems, right? So this has always been a dilemma. I see the same dilemma now happening with the AI discussions. And now we're talking about bringing in new tools, data-enabled ways of working, which is going to leave behind another army of people where we're going to start talking about how to upskill these people and bring them to a level of maybe more sophisticated knowledge workers. So this is going to take a lot of investment and a time lag, because I think exponentially AI is exceeding the speed of skills growth speed. So actually technology and AI is growing faster than the skills. That's what I'm observing. And I personally think when there will be a time where low-skilled labor, so things like thousands of people sitting in a factory shop floor and doing something, either in assembly work or sewing our cloths or whatever, this has very high potential of being replaced. And then it's going to be a big problem of labor, because there is no way you can upskill people sitting in Bangladesh and sewing cloths for thousands and thousands of workers at that kind of a location. So Probably within decades, that might also have a solution because then people will have more access into data, they can skill themselves and all that. But I think there will be a time horizon where we're going to have a lot of shifts in labor and power. That's what I believe.
Yeah, I want to think a little bit about, I think all of you had mentioned that, there's some kind of misconceptions that leaders may have about the role that AI may play, some of the hurdles that leaders may have in terms of within their organization of overcoming some of those misconceptions. I was wondering if we could dig into that a little bit more in terms of, Burcu, you talk about this time lag, right, to get there, right? So during this point in time, over I'm not sure what that time horizon is, but what are kind of the main misconceptions or the main hurdles that need to be overcome for businesses to get to a point where there is this more of a productive use of some of these technologies?
Well, I certainly think there will be big failures because people will forget to review what results come out of this, or there will be compromises of confidential information, or there will be misuse of all that cumbersome conclusions that is coming out of a model. So my expectation is we haven't hit that kind of a situation yet because we're not widely using it for many areas yet. So it's only about curiosity as we speak. I mean, when I get into a client environment or when I get into an environment like this, I always ask about how do you use AI, how do you use whatever is coming as new features, and everybody's either using the Midjourney or ChatGPT or Bard at most, and just playing around, and that's not going to be the ultimate use of this, right? This is a very much an iPhone that's being used with maybe 100 of all the functionalities that is given to us. I mean, these devices give us hundreds of different functionalities. We only use one of them. So it's like that, in my opinion. AI is coming up with 100 functionalities. We're at the moment using maybe one over 1,000 of it. I don't know. Fernando would know better or Karli would know better. So in my opinion, there's going to be a time when we'll start using, trying, and then we will have a lot of those trouble points. Risky points.
So there's a lot of experimentation. So I guess the point here is that we just don't know yet, and so
we don't know what we don't know.
Maybe it's more about process of how do we learn about the way in which AI can be used.
Look, there's no governance in many of the organizations. I mean, remember at one point in time in social media, people didn't know how to use social media about their corporate communications, about people communicating out there, and there was no governance in companies. This is exactly what we're living now. There's no governance in companies about how do we use AI or how don't we use AI. That's out there available. But how are we making use of it is not being governed at all, which is actually quite a risky thing.
But do you think it could be governed given that we don't know how it can be used? I mean, it's hard to write rules that would then perhaps quash and process innovations within these organizations, right? I mean, how do you think about that?
Yes, because the governors as well don't exactly know what the potential is or where they need to be governing, right? I mean, Europe is heading that. I think there's the European community that's now trying to put some regulations and governance around how to use AI. The rest of the world is not doing anything on that. And therefore, probably companies will do more than the regulators initially. But even the companies, when we talk about who is actually responsible for thinking about the good use of AI, I don't think there is a role that exists today. And should there be a role, that's a different story. I personally think there should not be one single role doing that. It's probably part of the governance that even the board, the CEO, the HR, the IT, they all need to be coming together, creating a committee of how do we approach this thing that's coming to our door. Is it a fire that's going to help us get civilized, or is it a fire that's going to burn us? Right? That's the analogy that I like about AI.
Yeah. So Fernando, Karli, I mean, any comments on, if you look at within organizations, what should we be creating roles, or how should the organization itself be changing to think about ways?
Let me give you a guidance how I see these two, because I'm quite a practical person as an engineer should be. This is really reasonably simple. And you said something very important. We don't know how we're going to use it. Okay, fine. Put that aside because tools have endless use cases, and that's absolutely fair. At the moment, what we're grappling with is reasonably simple. Is in order for any of these, and we're talking about Gen AI at the moment, not AI, because AI can be made safe in many ways. But if you're talking about Gen AI, one of the things we're grappling with is living in a world of shades of gray. We're not very good. We've not been set up as a world to deal with shades of gray. You know, we deal with it in our personal interactions, and it's hard enough, right? To suddenly have a situation where you have this machine where it could answer this way, it could answer this other way. There's all these shades of gray, and we're really uncomfortable with the shades of gray. So that's a problem. The second part of that problem is that we don't have good benchmarks that can even tell us what the shades are. So you're sitting in a thing that requires, we're talking about ChatGPT, and we shouldn't victimize them at all because it's a lovely thing, but 45 million novels worth of data. You put all that stuff in, and then you hope, and then you start figuring out how to control it. But all that stuff is in there. So what happens if you're a company, if you're a government, and you're sitting there going, well, in order for it to understand language, I have to shove all that stuff in. But I have no benchmark that says that whatever I want to use it for, it's the right answer, the appropriate answer, not the wrong answer. I don't have a way to deal technically with that problem at all. It doesn't exist. So in that world, you answer the question then, is it interesting that we don't see more disasters on the news of people using these things and causing all sorts of mayhem? The answer is because not all people are using it in production because they don't know how to benchmark, because they don't know how to control it. And it explains why 90% of the use cases are search, which doesn't require for this thing to give its opinion. It's giving its opinion of your stuff, and in that way it's controlled. So the answer to your more philosophical question is, the moment that we start figuring out how we can trust the answers, I think the use cases will go beyond the interesting, fun, and even the really useful, but I don't know if I can trust it, versus, if that makes sense, that's a good way of thinking it, that allows the rest of the organization to explore use cases in a safe way, which today we simply do not have.
Yeah,
I know it's convoluted, but hopefully it's useful.
Right, but it's very good, and I think kind of that's exactly. I just wrote a couple of things down because exactly the thought I was going to bring up is that every time I have seen an AI model, it doesn't have to be a Gen AI model, it's just a regular NLP model, an OC or whatever. It's always, if you operationalize it, put it to do some operational work, then you create a control role next to it, some kind of human validation control, just double checking that nothing stupid goes through, ensuring that everything is right. So kind of always build on the assumption that you cannot trust the model. In the end, you need to have a control point. And I think it's a little bit like, or the big operational revolution of AI happens most likely in the same way as with electrification from steam engines. That it's not about kind of changing that big steam engine on the factory with an electric one. It might have 20% better kind of power ratio. It's actually the fact that you can build small modular kind of engines. You can design the whole the production line differently. You don't have to connect everything into that one big steam engine that was powering everything. And that redesign of the process and operational flows then allowed actual productivity gains to be established on the factory floor. Something like that is going to be needed. It's not going to be small changes kind of into as-is situation that is really kind of be the end game. And that's probably also why we kind of see that the co-piloting things, they are very, very kind of popular, the searching type of elements, but then you cannot use them operationally anywhere. It's just nice to have kind of information, and it helps you to gain confidence into something that you have wrote, but it doesn't kind of substitute your role. It's in kind of co-pilot for your daily tasks.
Yeah. I want to turn to maybe some of the questions in the Q&A tab, and just as I'm looking through this, I think one of the one that's been the most upvoted is from Sarah Daher, who asks, what are the top skills to focus on in the future market where AI will prevail? And given that we're talking about the human labor market, right? I think this is as you're thinking about skill and talent development, what are you telling your clients or the organizations that you work with in terms of the skills that their people need to develop?
Well, let me give it a shot, and I'm sure everybody has something to add here. For me, the biggest thing is learning agility, because we don't know what we don't know. and because it's really important for everyone to be very open to learning and become a new version of themselves tomorrow, and make that part of their lives, right? I mean, this is an extremely important skill in my point of view. I think in 10 years from now, you might be doing something totally different in a totally different work environment. You should be very comfortable with it. If it scares you, if you're just trying to bank on what you've been building for the past 10 years and then continue your career like that, it's probably not going to help you. So that's for me the biggest and the most important skill. And maybe the other one, I'm going to actually attribute it to our sponsor, which probably makes sense because Fernando is also Accenture, our sponsor is Accenture. The other day I heard from Accenture the term called technology quotient, which is like you have an IQ, you have an EQ, and now you have a TQ, technology quotient. Fernando, you might know better than I do, but I really liked it because it's actually something like how technology savvy are you? How friendly are you to technology that is coming to you in different channels? It could be the devices, it could be AI, it could be software, it could be anything. But about all these technological trends, if you're open to learning, if you're just spending 1 or 2 hours of your weekly time to read about these things, you're all fine. That's my little answer to your question.
Yeah. Fernando, Karli, do you have any comments on the
I'll give you the obvious one, is AI skills. So there is no excuse anymore now that it's in the current limelight, and STEM students should be studying this, and they're going to come as a wave with this. And I'm really, whereas I'm a little bit cautious about other things, I'm really quite impressed how some of this AI stuff, generative AI specifically, can help in helping people learn. And it's a helper. It's not an answer. As you know, Vikas is a teacher, and I teach at university as well. It's not going to replace me as a teacher. But I tell you what, it's really helpful people that really want to gain new skills. It helps that partnership, that bouncing, that having ideas. It doesn't make you an expert in anything. You have to make yourself an expert. You can't just ask the thing for an answer and assume, not understand the underpinnings of the answer. But it's opened the channel to an ability to have a conversation about a learning topic at any time, at any hour, in a bouncy kind of way. So I do think it's going to help in creating skills and helping people evolve their skills. And it's what are those skills going to be? I think we're going to take the crystal ball and give it a good scrub. But I think it certainly will help in that, give it a positive spin.
Yeah, I agree with both of the panelists here. I think, and like to add on that, then heuristic way of thinking, understanding the context where you're actually working, being open for really kind of learning new things that was mentioned is much more important at the moment than kind of having literature in your head that is available, and you can bounce back ideas and get those from the AI systems quite quickly. But having the overall contextual understanding of where you operate and what things are around you, I think those skills will be kind of highlighted in the future even more.
Yeah, so it's actually this discussion on skills actually links to a question that Hari Krishnamurthy asks, which is, I think he poses this to Burcu, but I think all three of you can feel free to jump in on this. But there's this question of how have companies started to view skills for executives to lead AI projects? Is there a balance between management and storytelling skills and technical skills? But what sorts of executive level skills in AI project leadership are important here?
Well, the answer is yes. The companies have started to look into AI related skills. Do they really know what they need and what they need to look for? I don't think so, not in all of the cases at least. So there is a group of companies that has been pretty good in terms of putting data-related people into their organizations for the past decade. And their data governance is there, their data lakes are there, built already, and then they can also come up with their, let's say, more predictive analytics kind of models internally. Those companies have a bit more educated way of looking at what can I now start building on top of what I've been doing so far, and then go out there looking for much more what we call the AI nerds, geeks the PhDs that are really into developing these large models and create value for these companies. So this is a very niche group of companies I would classify. And then the rest of the companies, there's a lot of anxiety around what am I missing and what am I going to do about this? Although there is not much data happening, there is not much systems investment that has been happening for the past decade. And then now they want to leapfrog into an era where there's a lot of AI thing coming up from external forces and all that. And what they're looking for is still, I want the best of the best. And then, of course, those best of the best will not stick, and they will probably not be a good investment for their organization as well. So I think the answer is yes. But again, the maturity level of an organization is very much determining if they're building a good talent strategy or not in this recruitment at the moment.
And Vikas, if I can come in on that one, because obviously my job is to turn up my mind, and many people in my organization to turn up to these companies and try to help them solve AI problems. And the question we always get all the time, is starting to get now, is where have you done it before? How many times? Because everybody's become an amateur in AI in the last year, right? But the truth is, nobody wants amateurs to build the next thing or to people to learn on their dime. And it sounds like an unkind thing to say, but it is what it is. So there's a lot of, hey, where have you done this 10 times? In some cases, nobody's done it 10 times. Nobody can say that they've built 10 LLMs. Nonsense, doesn't exist. But you've got people that have been building AI for a long time that have all of that learning. So that happens a lot. And then in the question was a very important part, the storytelling, Brian Burcu, which you and I have talked about as well, which is not only do I want you to have done it 10 times, I want you to be able to explain it to the CEO and to the organization in a way they're going to understand, without being negative, without poo-pooing it, without being over enthusiastic. Help us with language navigate the journey and make some of the choices that we've talked about today.
Yep. I want to turn to a couple of related questions in the web chat. So one is from Joffrey, who asks, will companies rely on closed source API solutions like OpenAI, or will they build their own in-house solutions in order to keep sovereignty over the data? And Huiping asks a related question. The key concern with AI adoption is data ownership and confidentiality. How do you see technology companies dealing with these sorts of data confidentiality concerns? And is it the case that a lot of these larger corporations are going to build their own AI systems? So yeah. For any of the three of you that want to pick that one up, I think it's
I can start. It's my daily life.
Yeah, I think this is closest to Fernando. Yeah,
that's my daily life.
I didn't feel like jumping on the OpenAI question.
Oh, you always can. Come on, you can. It's a moving picture. So first of all, there's not an easy answer because it's a moving picture. The things we said before, the fact that we don't have benchmarks, there's a bunch of these things that make everyone unhappy and everyone a little bit uncertain where to go. Governments will most likely create their own models, because you cannot have something that helps you navigate healthcare problems that you cannot 100% deal with the providence. That's not an acceptable answer. But are the providers of the large models not evolving towards helping answer those things? Well, the answer to that has to be yes, right? So whilst the big commercial models navigate towards things that are going to be acceptable for us as society, and this is a really complicated problem, these are big things that take a lot of time. In the meantime, companies, governments look at inward and say, well, do I have the skill? Do I have the money? Do I have, if you want to do LLM processing, you're all right if you're in Ohio, which is where all the GPUs are. You're not all right if you're sitting somewhere else, where in the UK, where you need the CPUs to be sitting in the UK, because there aren't any available. So do I have the skills? Do I have the money? Do I have the availability? Do I even have the data? So all of these things are being played out. What I can tell you is, think about it less to do with restrictions, because they exist as I've described, and more to do with where people feel about these things. I think the answer is, if I'm a government, I probably need a model that I can justify to my citizenship, has the right ethical boundaries, has the right stuff. If I'm a company, for some cases, I may be able to use with the, if I'm assured appropriately, I may be able to use the commercially available. But in some cases, I may need to think about how I take something and I fine tune it and all these things. And everybody's now suddenly discovering that the word fine tuning, the 2 words, are easier said than done. And as it turns out, it's quite a complicated thing to do that requires, we'll go back to skills, right? We're talking about workforce, the impact on workforce. So suddenly you got these forces that are a bit circular, where I think I need, but I don't have, but I need, but I don't have, and who's working this out? And it's all, the way I put it to my customers, it's like putting all these words, putting them in a bag and just shuffling like this. And at the moment, that's where we are. We're in the shuffle. So the trends are those. Are there answers, coming out of that? Not just yet. I know it's a very unhelpful answer, but it is the landscape that we live in.
Yeah. Burcu, Karli, you want to build on that, or any thoughts on?
Nothing to add. Yeah. Nothing to add. All good. All well said.
So let me come to kind of a slightly different topic from Sammy, who asks, do employees and unions need to fight to get their share of AI and its benefits, or will the elite take it all? And I think Sammy's referring to Darren Acemoglu and Simon Johnson's recent book on Power and Progress, talking about whether the benefits of AI will be shared widely or whether they're going to lead to greater inequality. Any sort of reflections or thoughts on that, or how one could mitigate some of these potential concerns around inequality?
Yeah, don't have obviously an answer to this one, but I think as a citizen of a Nordic country, I would definitely love to see a situation that the benefits would be spread around a bit more in the society. Today, I'm a bit afraid about seeing how the progress in, for example, US is held by the corporations and their kind of investments to the LLMs and sitting behind these assets. So I don't have an answer, but I certainly hope there is a way to kind of spread this a bit more equally than currently we are seeing.
Yeah.
Well, I haven't read the book, but I'm less hopeful, Karli. I mean, I want to be hopeful.
Yeah.
But I think, my view is maybe down the line it could be, but as we progress in the coming maybe 5 to 10 years, I think it's going to be more. The benefits would be shared by. It won't be shared widely. It's going to be with the elite. Considering the knowledge workers becoming more powerful than ever, and I personally believe at least the low-skilled labor has a potential to be substituted in the short term, and that means actually a bit of inequality coming into the picture, as these people were earning their lives from things that will be automated as we speak. So that's unfortunately the reality in my point of view.
But do you think that there's a role that businesses have to try to mitigate that within their own workforce, which is to say, okay, we know that some of this low-skilled labor is being substituted away. There's a way of upskilling. There's a way of investing in that allows them to mitigate some of this. Or what role or do businesses have within a given organization, right? So forget about kind of at a societal level, but think about kind of the role of a CEO or a leader within a given organization where you have a lot of this workforce being substituted away. What should they be thinking about or doing with respect to the inequality issue?
Well, for me, the role is from the developers of this, right? Rather than the users of this. So if you think about the developers of this, and not to name any particular company, but the ones that are creating the know-how and doing the developments, they could be considerate about bringing some of these social impact questions on the board of the regulators, and then and taking conscious decisions depending on the size of the matter as it hits different countries or as it hits different work groups. So it's like you might have found a cure for a disease and you're not immediately launching it because there might be implications. It's exactly like that. Maybe you find a cure to automate everything in the assembly factory workers, but you don't launch it now because you don't have a solution for millions and millions of people that are going to lose their job tomorrow. If you launch it tomorrow, then you create a big tsunami of people unemployed and a social trauma. So the social responsibility sits with the developers as well as the regulators sitting together with them and understanding the implications of this. And I was actually going through this recently in an Economist article by Yuval Harari. I mean, he's a big thinker, obviously, and he's not a very tech-friendly person per se. I mean, not tech-friendly. I mean, he understands it, but he's not pushing for technology advancement in every angle. That's one of the arguments he's actually putting forward. So the sociology impact this is going to create is not being discussed deep enough.
Yeah, but it's interesting that you place the burden not on business, but on government and on the developers, right? Rather than on kind of the ultimate users of this. I mean, Fernando.
Because I think the users are poor at the moment. They're also lost. Like they're having this anxiety of I don't want to miss anything. Like what's going to happen to me? That's what I'm feeling from the users. But the masters, the technology creators in this game is acting as if they're creating this big power that's going to conquer the world, which creates that kind of anxiety in all the rest of the organizations, right? So there is some social responsibility that sits with them.
Yeah. I was going to say, by the way, that it's interesting because I use the idea that obviously this stuff, because it's easily available, by the way, that's the other thing. It's quite easily available as long as you got the ability to engage with a keyboard and you got a brain, you can engage, which means that the raising water level will raise all boats as long as you have a boat. The hockey stick for the last 2 years, so people like me, 25 years doing AI, well, we were having some fun, and then suddenly the last 2 years, the hockey stick has gone crazy. I think that massive exponential growth does nothing but build the distance between those that can and those that can't. It just makes it different. It just, you see what I mean? It's not a linear, oh, we're getting further away. No, this is now even. Can you imagine trying to explain all of this AI stuff to somebody who's just been given a mobile device in Africa or wherever that just don't happen to be able to read, but they're using? I mean, the whole thing is just becoming just a different planet. So I agree with everything that's been said, which is that yes, this is frantic and doesn't seem to stop, but is it building? I'm going to read that book, by the way. It sounds fascinating. But it does feel, and I know Harari very well, but I do think with all of this, the world has to catch up, or we're all in trouble, right? But quite.
So maybe one, just a couple of minutes left. There's one question also in the chat group is, what are the best hacks to build our technology quotient so that we don't become obsolete professionally? So kind of a very practical question. Any advice on that front?
Well, I dropped the thing, so I am responsible to answer, I guess. So look, Fernando, if you know more details about this, let me know. But because I heard it from an Accenture talent development person, I really liked it, and I wanted to use it here. So it's not a formula, right? It's really, you have everything in your fingertips. If you have internet, it's in your fingertips. So I strongly suggest that you get a Gen AI training for at least dummies and like business executives, or you name it, right? It doesn't matter if you've ever coded or if you have ever done data analytics. Doesn't matter at all. You just start from somewhere. There are courses in Udemy, courses in Khan Academy, courses in LinkedIn, and I mean, people find me very opinionated here, but especially for young people who are probably still in the first 10 years of their careers, I strongly suggest that they take a basic coding class. I think coding is an important skill, guys. I mean, don't say I'm not going to be a computer engineer. What am I going to do with coding? It is an important thing. If you have never coded, probably it's going to be very difficult for you to understand what all this thing is about. So those are two things.
Yeah. Any other thoughts, Karli and Fernando?
Well put. Micro training. Go and do micro. That's what we do in Accenture. Micro training. Assess yourself. Don't just learn. Assess. Learn and assess, which is what our IQ does for us. Our TIQ does for us. Learn, assess. Learn, assess. Don't just think right reading. Apply. Learn and apply. Do it as much as possible.
Yeah. Start today. I guess that's the only advice left.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much to all of you. Great insights and really appreciative discussion. Just want to also highlight that we have the Future Forum in Singapore early November, which will focus on how will Web3 and AI transform the world of finance, for those of you that are in Singapore at that time. But thank you all very much for fantastic, very honest discussion on this topic of AI, and great set of insights.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.